Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's a Monday, so you know what that means. Time for Ask Mike. Mike Irwin here, ready to answer your questions. And Mike, it's a good week because it's game week.
Game week. Got some questions, but not a lot about the game. A lot of questions about other weird stuff.
Okay.
You know, I just answer the questions. I don't make them up. So.
All right. Well, I'm ready to dive into it if you are. Our first question is from Lanny, who asks, what are the top issues to be concerned about heading into week one? I know camp has always been going great, but there are always problems to consider with most teams going into the first game, even Alabama.
The only thing I can think of coming out of Sam Pittman's Thursday press conference, he talked a lot about injuries, said the offensive line was beat up, but then Brady Latham, I think, was out most of last week, but then he ended up saying, I expect to have all those guys back. And indeed, the depth chart came out today, and Latham is, now I don't know, you could be listed as a starter and still not play, I guess, but we should find out either after Monday's workout, might find out about some of these injuries. Jaden Hazelwood the slot receiver, was also a guy that missed several practices last week. Pittman ended up saying he expected him back, but you never really know. And then there was a battle at one of the cornerback spots, and Pittman ended up saying that all three of those guys that they were looking at had been injured so much or missed a practice here and missed a practice there, then they'd be back, then it'd be somebody else, that he hadn't been able to make a decision. Well, they've named a starter. So I think it's Day-Day.
Yeah, I think it is Day-Day. Ladarius Bishop
ended up with that other cornerback spot. Hudson Clark, we kind of felt like all along would get that one cornerback spot. So again, I assume that they're all healthy. So I don't think there are any injury issues to any of the starters this week, but apparently they were missing some practices last week, which is fairly common. August camp, you get to the last week of camp, you got a lot of guys beat up.
Yeah, exactly, and they definitely went hard in fall camp.
I would say the other thing I would be looking at again is that tight end position, simply because there's not a lot of experienced depth there, and they're asking a whole lot out of Trey Knox. He's looked really good. They're really happy with him. I have no reason to believe that he won't play well, but I just think there's a lot of pressure on him. But that would be a concern to me, maybe not the coaches, but that's about it. I don't think there's a lot to worry about. I mean, there aren't some big red flags out there going, ooh, what about this, what about that? I mean, Sam Pittman, I don't know if you saw this, but I think they released this video that was taken of him addressing the team, and I believe it was before Saturday's practice. And if you go back to Thursday, he said, we're kind of beat up right now, so instead of doing our dress rehearsal game on Saturday, we're going to do that on Friday because there's no contact involved, and then we'll go back and go in full pads on Saturday. They'd actually started their Cincinnati prep on Thursday, so Saturday would be the second day of preparing for Cincinnati, and it would be in full pads. And he was up there, and he made some reference about how well he'd been sleeping. And he asked some of the other coaches, you been sleeping well? And he said, it's because we got a damn good team.
Oh, yeah. I think he definitely had some confidence.
If the head coach says that, I guess everything's okay, right?
That's from the head hog himself. I feel pretty good if he thinks they're pretty good. So Hal Tanner wants to know, what player has been the biggest surprise so far? Whoever it is, can he keep it up? Can he do it in a real game?
That would be Warren Thompson, I would have to say. There are a lot of guys that have kind of been a surprise, but he's been the biggest surprise simply because even though he had a couple of games last year after transferring in from Florida State where he did all right, he never really stood out, I think, the way they thought he would. And then last spring was supposed to be his time to shine, and virtually nobody shined in the passing game in the spring, including him. And Sam Pittman has mentioned about 12 times how good he's looked, and has said if he continues to look like this with all the other guys we have at receiver, we're going to have a really good year. So they're all happy about him. I think in one of the press conferences, one of the D-backs was asked, what did he say? He said, man, he's just a lot better than he was. He's running better routes. He's running crisper routes. He's getting open. It's hard for us to stop him. So I would say Warren Thompson is the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think he surprised a lot of people in fall camp, not just us, and coaches and players as well. So Arky Redneck asks, I really like Dominic Johnson. I'm glad he's finally back at practice, but you and Alyssa said on TV last week that you didn't think he'd play against Cincinnati. You still sticking by that? I also said he didn't. I don't think he would play. So.
Okay, well, all three of us said that. Sam Pittman did comment more on that. He said that, number one, through 3 practices back, he didn't have any swelling in his knee. Remember, he had the knee surgery, so that's always important. When you come back, if you don't experience swelling, that means it's healed up pretty good. So he said that was important. But he said whether or not he starts, they're going to have to, he said he's going to have to get hit some. And he said we probably do it on Monday and probably against the scout team. So that still has to happen. And then he said after that, we'll check him again, and if he still doesn't have any swelling, then there's a possibility. I still say the only way they play him is if they need him. In other words, if something's going wrong with, A.J. Green, Rocket Sanders, if those guys aren't getting the job done for whatever, if they feel like they need more of a power guy up the middle, and maybe they end up in a lot of third and fourth and short situations, and they need Dominic Johnson, then maybe he plays. But if they don't, I don't think they're going to put him in just to play him. I think resting him another week would be the smart move. And that's just me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I thought all of last week he was still wearing the brace too.
Yes, and he may continue to do that. I would guess he would do it in the game. So. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. Space Hog asks if OC Kendall Briles leaves at the end of the year and Illinois has a really good year with new OC Barry Lunney Jr., what are the chances Coach Pittman brings back Lunney to be the new OC? Also, I didn't watch any UTSA games last year. Is Lunney's scheme similar to the scheme that Briles runs?
It's really probably more tempo and a little more wide open than Briles. But I watched the Illinois-Wyoming game. That would have been Barry Lunney's debut as offensive coordinator at Wyoming. I watched that on Saturday. And I was really asking myself, is this going to be what he did at UT San Antonio? Is this going to be what Brett Bielema typically does? Because Brett Bielema as a head coach has a reputation of, I don't care who my coordinator is, he's going to run my offense. And that's pretty much what they did. They were run-oriented. They threw it some. But it was clearly, and especially in critical situations, they went to their running game. Now they blew Wyoming out, so there's no complaints there. But my guess is what you're going to see out of Barry Lunney Jr. when he's at Illinois is whatever Brett Bielema wants him to do. So there's that. I don't think he would come back here as offensive coordinator if Kendall Briles left. I think the only way Barry Lunney Jr. comes back to this staff is if he's offered the head coaching job. I think he took that Illinois job to become a head coach. I think he knows if he wants to ever coach here as a head coach, he's got to become a head coach and he's got to win as a head coach. So I don't know where he would end up if he's successful at Illinois. Who knows what job he will get? But he's got to get a head coaching job, and then he's got to be impressive as a head coach in order to come back here. And it may not be a burning desire on his part to come back here. I don't know. But I don't think he would come back here as a coordinator. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, head coach or bust for you. Hot Dogger says, I see we play A&M again in Dallas this year. Who makes these dumb decisions? And when will A&M have to play the Hogs again in Fayetteville?
Okay, you got to go all the way back to Jeff Long. He's the one that made that decision about playing A&M in the first place, and that was all the way back in 2009. So for 3 years, Arkansas and A&M played in Jerry World. It was a non-conference game for both teams, and it was a good idea in my opinion, because you get a recruiting. You're exposed recruiting-wise in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're in a big, nice venue. Hog fans have always liked to go to Dallas, and Jerry World's a great place to watch a game, and Arkansas won all 3 of those games, so it seemed like a good thing to do. However, when A&M joined the SEC, for whatever reason, it was agreed upon that they each would play a home and home, so they did that. They played at A&M first. That was the Johnny Manziel breakout game. That was the first time he really showed what he could do, and of course Arkansas lost, and that wasn't good. And then Arkansas came back the next year and lost a closer game to A&M in Fayetteville. Then after those 2 games, they decided to go back and finish the Jerry World contract, and this is where I don't know, A&M had to sign it too, but Jeff Long, for whatever reason, upped it for 10 years. So it will run through 2025. Now, at some point, well, I know at what point, A&M expanded their stadium, and it went over 100,000, and they logically said to themselves, we got to make some money off this.
Yeah.
We're losing money playing this Arkansas game in Jerry World. We can make a lot more by playing it at home. And then I think Arkansas pretty much felt the same way. They had done their own North End Zone project, $150 million, and they wanted to pay that back. And you're going to make more money playing A&M in Fayetteville, which would be a sellout. So I think they both agreed at that point, yeah, this probably, now that we're conference opponents, and now that we both expanded our stadiums, we probably should play at home and home. But there's a little issue there, and that is Jerry Jones, and you got a contract. And I don't know what the negotiations were between Arkansas and A&M, but it's not hard to figure out what Arkansas's position was at that point. You're going to break a contract with Jerry Jones, a guy that's done what he's done for this program, the donations he's made, the stuff he's done. You're going to say, nah, we're going to break the contract. They decided not to do that. Now, my guess is when it runs out, A&M has already said, look, we don't want to continue to do this. I don't think Arkansas will do it either. So now the issue becomes in 2025, when that contract, I think it's up after 2024. The issue becomes in 2025, does Arkansas replace that game with another non-conference game in Jerry World? Like they could play, I don't know, a team out of the ACC, a team out of the Big Ten, a team out of the Big 12.
Like a rotating opponent?
Yeah, they could play Texas Tech one year. The next year they could play Nebraska. They could play, maybe a Pac-12 team, USC or somebody like that. Would they be interested in continuing that game as a non-conference game, which would take it back to its original intent, which is you're getting exposed in front of the crowd in Dallas, where you recruit a lot, but you're not playing a conference game. So that could happen. That's not been determined. But again, long answer to your question, the decision was made by Jeff Long.
Gotcha.
Whether it was dumb or not is up to an individual person to say, I think it's dumb. No, I don't think it's dumb. I think it's dumb, whatever.
Well, we'll have to see what happens in 2025, if that gets renewed or not. Hog asks, why no fan day this year? Was it unique to Arkansas and just not well attended in the past? Seems like good experience for young fans, and haven't really seen an explanation.
No, it didn't have anything to do with the attendance. I thought they always got a good turnout for fan day. They didn't have fan day in 2020 because of COVID. That's logical. You've got all these COVID, even though we now know that none of that made any sense because it's now been revealed even by the CDC that there was never any danger of giving people COVID outdoors. It was an indoor problem. So the fact that they were worried about people running around spreading COVID out at an outdoor fan type thing was incorrect, but nobody knew that at the time, so they decided not to have fan day. We don't want our players exposed to fans. We're worried about our players getting through and being ready to play every game anyway. We don't want them unnecessarily around other fans. So the decision was made not to have fan day. Now, what happened last year? Because they didn't have it last year either. Okay, I'm talking to some people over there. This is not official. But they said the U of A is kind of looking at what other schools have done about fan day. Now, what does that mean? Some schools have started making fan day a part of their NIL package. Now, think about it. What are you doing with NIL? I've talked about this before. You've got two ways that NIL is being done. You've got the cheating way, in which some schools just get these collectives and they're just blatantly throwing money at athletes and there's no real NIL intent. It's just, okay, we have an NIL here, here's a bunch of money. There's that. And then there are schools like Arkansas and there are others that are saying, well, wait a minute, let's come up with ways where it's legitimate, where athletes are getting money, but they're performing a service. And we've seen that happen at Arkansas, where all of these athletes have gotten involved with nonprofits. So, an organization like the Hunt family will pay the basketball team the money that goes to the athletes, but then the athletes turn around and help these various charities raise money so that the nonprofits can continue, and that's a good use of NIL. Well, what better use of NIL, because this was the original intent of NIL, was name, image, and likeness. If you have a fan day, but you charge money for fans to go to fan day, but as a result of that, they get their picture taken with their favorite players, the players autograph, they talk to them, you get to meet your fan, and so you're paying for it, the money goes to the athletes, and everybody wins, right? So I'm not saying the U of A is going to that, but I was told they're at least considering that because they think it's a good use of the NIL situation.
Yeah, and then you would split it between every player on the team?
I'm not sure how it would work, but yeah, I think so. You're paying money to go there, and then you got a certain number of athletes that go in there and mix with the fans and get their picture taken and autograph and all that, and they get the revenues from it.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea to me. Team Otis says the Ryan Mallett documentary you guys made was awesome. Are you guys making any more in the future? And do you have any memories of Ryan from his time at Arkansas?
Well, it wasn't you guys. It was Alyssa and Will Moclair who's sitting over here.
I love that you gave them credit because I was about to say.
They're the ones that went and spent a week with Ryan Mallett as he got his team ready to play his first game as the head coach. I agree, it was good. Yes, I think we'll do more of that because I think Alyssa likes doing that, and I think there are other stories out there about ex-Razorbacks and what they're doing now that people would be interested in. So yes, I think you can safely say that there will be more of these in the future.
Yeah. And memories of Ryan?
Memories of Ryan Mallett. Okay. Best one was probably 2010. LSU game at War Memorial Stadium. LSU was ahead right before halftime. There was enough time for maybe one play, and Mallett threw about a 60 to 70-yard touchdown pass to Kobe Hamilton. It was almost like Kobe could have just kept running into the locker room after the touchdown. So it was pretty dramatic, and they beat LSU that game. They finished second in the West behind Auburn, who won the national championship that year. And Arkansas used that win, among others, to go to the Sugar Bowl. I think that may have been the only time they've ever been in the Sugar Bowl. I can't remember. They've certainly, in my time here, they haven't been. So that was a Sugar Bowl game, the one where Ohio State won on some weird stuff, and they cheated before the game and didn't get caught because the ESPN had too much influence over the NCAA and said, yeah, they're selling your little golden pants at Ohio State is not good, but we'll punish you guys next year. And then they pretty much didn't do it because the guys that sold the golden pants left. No, whatever, you know. But that's my favorite on the field memory. Off the field, you know, there was a 2009 Florida game, which any Razorback fan who saw it can tell you that was the ultimate screw job by the referees. They just openly cheated to allow Florida to win. And you should be ashamed.
I will be ashamed.
You should be totally ashamed. And so there was this radio person in Northwest Arkansas who was from Florida.
I know
this
story.
As Gator Girl.
I know this story.
And so she was interviewing Ryan Mallett the next year and started teasing him about what happened in the Florida game. And he wasn't in a teasing mood after the way that happened. So I think he kind of went off on her. Then he told Bobby Petrino. Then she comes in a press conference right after that and starts asking questions. And Petrino basically says, I'm not answering any of your questions until you take the Gator hat off. She was wearing a Gator hat. So that's all in the past. But that's kind of my favorite off the field, Ryan Mallett.
That's a great off the field memory. I love
crazy.
that. I love that he is intertwined in that story as well. Blood Red Hog has what he thinks would be a good solution to the lack of a large centralized tailgating area like the Grove next to Razorback Stadium. He says, why don't they remove the concrete in Lot 44 and replace it with nice grass, block off Maple Street, and have one large open tailgating area from Lot 43 down to the stadium? But we have a person that says that would be a bad idea. Alex for Hogs 88 says, absolutely not. As someone who works on the U of A campus, parking is atrocious and so few parking lots where Faculty, staff, vendors, yellow can park. Taking away such a parking lot would be very, very bad and make the already terrible parking situation on campus even worse. But the story is not over yet. Another fan on Hogville has an answer for that. This is great, Mike.
Yeah,
Fact checker says dig into lot 44 and build a multi-level underground parking garage with a grass top. Okay, it'd be similar to Meadow Street parking garage but underground. Have the top level be a park during normal operating hours but tent tailgate spot.
Yeah, I love all this because now we have a guy that offers, we were talking about tailgating issues last week. So we have a guy that offers a solution to how Arkansas can have an area like the Grove. Then we have a guy that comes in and says, no, that's a bad idea. Then we have another guy that comes in and said, well, but I can make it work if you do it this way. And actually, Fact Checker has a good idea. It's a very expensive idea. Not sure they would ever do it, but think about this. If you went down below where the park, it's the north end zone lot. It's the lot north of the Broyle Center where we park when we go over and go to press conferences. Okay, if you dug down and put one level or maybe even two levels of parking down there, and then you came up above that and had a concrete top and put grass over that. And I know that will work because this came up when Arkansas years ago made the decision to put those two fields south of their indoor workout area. And they originally were going to put two grass fields there with a parking lot underneath it. Now, if you go under there now, there's only a parking lot under the part that's artificial turf. The grass part doesn't have parking in it. Now, why is that? Because after talking with the grass people, they found out that while it is possible to put a concrete base down and have drainage and grow grass and trees over that, you probably can't make it work if you're working out on it every day. The grass probably wouldn't hold up. So they decided not to do that. But if you're talking about that whole north end zone lot being turned into a grass area on top with trees, and I would say add statues of former players and coaches and stuff, and you know how you walk up to things like that and you push a little button and a little guy speaks?
Yeah.
Hugo Bezdek came to Arkansas in 1908. You see Hugo's statue, and it's an educational experience.
I love that.
So you could have that. And then what you do is you build it up high enough that you don't have to block off Maple Street. It goes over the top of Maple Street.
That's great.
So now you're talking about all that grass on that hill north of Maple Street being a tailgate area, and it comes down all the way over the street and all the way to the north end zone lot. So it would be a huge area like the Grove. You could plant trees there, have grass, have statues, have little speakers, and Darren McFadden once did this, you know, and you got DMAC, his statues there.
I love it.
So I think it would be great, but it would cost out the wazoo. So who's going to pay for this? I don't know.
Maybe we'll see if any nice backers like that idea and want to back
but that would be a definite solution to the problem of not having an area like the Grove.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Bakerman wants to know, why hasn't the facade on the west side of Razorback Stadium been renovated? Did the proximity of Razorback Road prevent them from renovating when it was completed back in 2001? The steel is such an eyesore and resembles an erector set? Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
like those
Yeah.
little things you get when you're a kid.
Yeah.
The simple answer to all that is that most of these renovations have been done because they make the athletic department money. They built the north end zone thing, but it gave them this huge area, and if you've ever been inside of that, it's a place where if you have a seat outdoors in the north end zone, you can go inside. You've got all these areas where you've got food in there. You got TVs. If it's too hot, too cold, if it's raining, you can go in there. If you take your wife and she doesn't want to sit outside, but she wants to sit and visit with somebody else's wife, they can sit in there indoors in the air conditioning or the heat when it gets cold and enjoy themselves. But it costs to sit there. But that makes the athletic department money. If you just did the facade on the west side, which it does need to be done, how does that make the athletic department money? It doesn't. It just makes the stadium look better. There's no other way to gain revenue for that. So that's why it hasn't been done. Now, the closeness of the sidewalk and the street, I don't think has anything to do with that. Have you ever looked at the way they put the facade up on the other sides? It just comes off and you attach it. They can come up with a way to attach all the bricks and other stuff that they put up with I guess they put things up between the steel beams and then attach the bricks or whatever that they do to that. I'm not a construction guy. So it could be done. It's just going to cost some money, and it's not going to make them money, but every once in a while, I think you have to do something to make yours. This is the main entrance to your stadium, you know, and it looks terrible. I told somebody one time, it's like you're living in a house, and you say, man, I want to make my house nicer. So you make the sides and the back of your house all nice with new brick and stuff like that, and then you leave the front like it always looked.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Because that's what they've done. Now here's another idea. You've got that raised parking lot across the street from the stadium, right?
Yeah.
If you notice, if you've driven along Razorback Road lately, they're slowly but surely making that 4-lane. They started down at MLK and they're moving forward, and now they've just gone past the U of A police station and they're moving further. I say you could go ahead and complete that process. You would take something, you'd have to take a little bit away from that hill over there. You'd have to dig into the side of it, and instead of a sloping hill, you'd probably just have it come out and have a concrete wall there or something, maybe with bricks or whatever. So you could have a 4-lane go through there, but you could also then do the same thing with that. You could build parking at street level, then come up over the top and have the concrete at the top and have the grass, the trees, the little guy going,
I love that.
and then you could walk across a bridge and go down some steps and go in the stadium that way. That's another way to spend a buku amount of money.
I know you're not a construction guy,
but if you did both of those projects, you would have effectively created a huge tailgating area on the west side of the stadium and the north side of the stadium, which I think would be very cool. I told somebody over there the other day, look, this is just a sample of the ideas that I can come up with. If you want to hire me and pay me $150,000 a year, I will then get with an architect who will then come up with a drawing and a concept of these things that I'm proposing. Then I will go with somebody in the athletic department like Hunter Yurchik, and I'll go out and help sell these ideas to rich donors.
All right, there you go.
All you gotta do is pay me some money and I'll do it.
All right, come on, Hunter Yurchik. I know he watches the show.
I've got tons of ideas. More stuff for Baum Stadium, the way you can improve the softball facility.
Yeah, I know you do.
Improvements for soccer, all kinds of ideas.
They need to hire you.
Yes, they do.
They do. They do. Plum Hogs says,
I'm an idea guy.
I know you are.
But these are two great ideas, and it's not just mine. Again, the idea of creating tailgating above parking around the stadium.
I love it. I love it.
And I don't care if it costs a lot of money. You just find tell Jerry Jones to do it.
Yeah,
the Cowboys are worth like $10 billion now.
Or come on, the Hunts, the Waltons, someone will do it, right?
Absolutely.
Somebody will do it. Plum Hog says Arkansas appears to have the best group of coaches plus athletic director we've had in years, maybe ever. I don't think Pittman or Van Horn could ever be lured away, but how solid are Musselman and Yurchek? Would they leave us for more money or maybe a school they just like better?
You know, you would have to know them a lot better than I know them to know the answer to that question. If I'm either one of them, and I have a school in mind where I say, I like where I'm at, but if these guys offered, I would go. And who knows who that might be. And there might not be a school like that. But if there is, would I tell anybody? No. So the only answer I can give you is you're just going to have to wait and see. It looks good right now. They say all the right things. They like living here. Musselman goes to San Diego a lot, but he goes on vacation and gets that out of his system, and he comes back here. So I think maybe he'll stay.
Do you think he would go to a California school, though?
I don't know.
Like USC offers him,
UCLA, something like that.
I mean,
with all their tradition, I just don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know about Yurchek. I think at one time Yurchek probably, when he got here, would have probably said, well, yeah, the right offer, I'm going to move up. I'm going to go to, someplace like Alabama or, a bigger athletic budget than Arkansas has. Yeah. There are places like that. Maybe A&M. He was down at Houston. Maybe he'd go back, be the AD at A&M.
Don't say that one, Mike.
But he likes it around here. And I think he's discovered, and I think maybe maybe Musselman has discovered something that I think most normal people discover when they move here. Have you figured it out?
Yeah. It's a great place.
It's a great place. And you don't know that when you move here. I didn't know. I just came here in '75, and it wasn't nearly as populous as it is now. in those days didn't have all the stuff that you have now up and down the interstate.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just got here and I went, man, the weather's great and the people are nice, and man, Razorback athletics is cool. You know, it's like having your own version of the Dallas Cowboys around here or whatever. So I think they should stay. I don't know if they will. We'll see.
I think that's a good point, though. I think if you fall in love with it, you know, you should stay. But Dr. Strangepork asks, with a new well-deserved contract for Coach Deifel, how difficult is it for Hunter to juggle paying for a quality, non-revenue earning sport coach versus a revenue earning one? If every sport wins, obviously not every coach can be taken care of.
See, I'm not sure that that's true.
I don't think that's true
I think if
either.
every sport wins, you figure out a way to pay
You
them,
figure out
right?
a way to, and I think it becomes a revenue earning sport.
Well,
I mean, have you seen
some
this?
of them, softball, for instance, might be coming close if they continue to expand and draw. Some of these are not ever going to be revenue producing.
Right.
But the point is, if you get somebody that can win in swimming, it's somebody that can win in volleyball. If you're going to win a national championship in volleyball and tennis, men's tennis or whatever, you got the coach, but you're going to say, well, I'm just going to let somebody else take him because we just don't have enough money to keep this guy here. I don't think that's the case. I think Hunter Yurachek has a plan to bring coaches like that in here to win, and when they win big, he will figure out how to pay them. Now, all of these people who are complaining right now, we get complaints all the time on Ask Mike about what's going on with them raising the baseball ticket prices and wanting big donations, and I got kicked out of my seat and I'm now down here, so I'm not going to games anymore. Why am I losing my parking? Why is parking going up? Why are free parking spaces shrinking? Why? I get told every day, the athletic department is just all about money these days. Yeah. Duh. That's how you do this. You aren't able to pay these top quality coaches if you don't come up with money. Now, again, yes, it's good in football, basketball, baseball to be generating revenue to help pay, but you're going to have, if you want a good overall athletic department, you're going to have sports that don't generate the money to pay for the sport. So does this mean if we did a poll with the average Razorback fan and we said, you know, Deifel's really good and she's done a great job, but if we pay her a lot of money, we still may lose a little bit on softball. So let's just let her leave. Do you think the average fan would agree with that? I think they would say
well,
no.
Just look at FSU, what's happened with them and their soccer coach, you know? I mean, you win a national title and national titles and,
exactly.
and you let them go because of money.
Well, I don't think Yurachek would do that. So I think, yes, he's always coming up with extra ways to make money because he knows if you're going to have an overall successful program and win in almost every sport and maybe win big, it's going to cost some money.
Yeah,
So,
I think you're exactly right on that.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Myriad_rocker says, I toured the baseball facility on Saturday, and it's an incredible thing to see. I noticed that Coach Hobbs had a huge framed print of Kevin Kopps and his Golden Spikes win. His is autographed, but I'd still love to have a copy of that print. Do you know where we can get one? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I called over to the athletic department and they said, don't talk to us, that's a baseball thing. The baseball program commissioned that photograph to be turned into whatever it was. It's a big frame thing, I guess, in Coach Hobbs' office, and it's got a bunch of graphics on it and everything. So the best answer I can give is call the baseball office. They have a secretary there. You can call there and you can just ask, is there any way to purchase that? You're either going to be told yes or no. But my guess is if they got a lot of people asking if they could get that, they would probably make it available because you can make money off of it. We're talking about money again. So
Yeah, it's a theme in this show, right?
that's the theme of
Money.
the show. Way to make money
Way
for
to
more money for the athletic department.
And
But you would make this guy happy because he's willing to pay to get a copy of it.
Yeah,
and I
true.
think there would be other fans that would be willing
Hey,
to do that.
Stadium Shop's got to get in on that. They're going to have to get in on
Maybe Robert and those guys need to go to the baseball program and say, hey, can you get us some of these prints and we'll sell them in here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, final question for you guys today. Hang 10 Hogs says, I moved to Arkansas in 1974. The 77 team was the best I ever saw. If it wasn't for Earl that year, what was the best Razorback team in your opinion? Also, when did Holtz and Broyles get sideways? You probably have a good story about that back then. Oh, you can bet he has a good story.
Yeah, I would agree with him, by the way. That is certainly the best Razorback team I've ever seen. And I've had people tell me, and I wasn't here for the national championship. I was in high school back then. But I've had people tell me that talent-wise, that team was better than the national championship team, and they almost won a national championship. If Earl Campbell doesn't catch that screen pass and go down to the 2-yard line, and they scored a play or two after that, Arkansas goes undefeated, and they win a national championship. So that team was really good. They were the deepest team I've ever seen with talent. They not only were good across the board at all of their positions, but there were backup people that could step in if anything happened to the starters and would be virtually as good. That's why that team was so good. Yeah. So I agree with him. That was the best team I've ever covered and probably the best of all time, even though they didn't win a national championship. So what was the other part of that?
The other part was, when did Holtz and Broyles get sideways? And you probably have a good story about it.
It really started with Lou, and I didn't learn this for years. Clay Henry talked to me about this one day because he got it from his dad, Orville Henry. Lou was an insomniac. He couldn't sleep. He would get 2 and 3 hours of sleep a night. So if you've ever been around anybody that doesn't get good sleep, they get bizarre. Their behavior is bizarre. They just get mad. They're walking around. They're tired, and anything can make them mad. That was Lou. I didn't know insomniac was part of the problem, but all you had to do, Lou Holtz on TV was funny. On his television show, he told jokes, he did things, and the fans loved him. And I used to get fans coming up to me and go, "Isn't Lou a great guy? Isn't it so much fun to be around him every day?" And I would just say, "Yeah, okay." But in reality, you wanted to go the other way if you saw him coming because you never knew what he was going to say to you. I used to tell people Lou, though, was an equal opportunity jerk. It didn't matter if you were a big shot with $5 million or somebody with no money. If he ran into you at the wrong time and he was in a bad mood, he would probably insult you. He's done that to me over nothing. He's done it to a lot of other people. And so this started to get back to Frank. And I was sitting in Frank's office one day, and I used to go in there and sit down because Frank wouldn't close the door to his office completely. It'd be open like that much.
I love it.
And you could hear, he talked real loud. So he'd be there, "I told you, no, no." So you'd hear him saying stuff in his office. So I'm in there one day, and he's clearly having a conversation with somebody that's mad because Lou insulted them. And he's like, "I know, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. He just does that stuff. I don't know. And he just went on and on and on and on. Well, that started to become really annoying. And the other thing that was happening is the longer Lou was here, the more his football program kind of started going downhill. Now, that wasn't the reason that he got fired. Ultimately, and people said it was because of his support for Jesse Helms and a bunch of other stuff. Ultimately, Frank realized that Lou was starting to lose the better players in state. They were losing. The year that he got fired, the top 3 players in the state all committed to Oklahoma. And when Frank started calling around and asking high school coaches what's going on around here, what they told him was, "We don't like Lou. He's a jerk. If one of my players gets offered Oklahoma or, Texas or Baylor or someplace, I'm going to tell him to go there. I don't want him to play at Arkansas and get treated like that." So Frank finally realized, I got to do something about this. I can't let him do this and have it hurt our recruiting. So Lou, and it's the way this always worked with Frank, he would fire people, but he would end up doing them a favor because he would always help them get another job. And he helped Lou get a job at Minnesota. Lou used that job to get the Notre Dame job and then won a national championship at Notre Dame. So firing Lou Holtz actually helped Lou Holtz, but it also helped Arkansas because his program was going downhill.
Well, that was
long story,
but I love it, Mike, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. That's it for another edition of Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.